What's up, good people? Craig here, Garrett here. Here for the last preseason game. Thank God it is over. Any preseason game that goes over 3 hours should be absolutely illegal.
War
They should
crime.
they should absolutely stop the game after 3 hours. The fact that it went 3.5 was atrocious. With all the penalties and everything else in between. I mean, we didn't need that fourth quarter. It could have ended in a tie. I would have been fine with it too. But so that game sucked. There was no Chargers lose it, obviously, but who cares? It's the preseason. But in my mind, I do not want to cover this game. I know there's like a lot of things we could probably talk about, but I think what's more important and probably more interesting is start to talk about like these bubble guys. So we watched 4 preseason games. We know some of the locks. We can go through it. I think let's just go through this roster and talk about like the guys that are kind of on the bubble and who, should make the team. You want to make the team, guys that maybe, are worth stashing on the practice squad. So Craig and I are going to do that today because that's much better than anything that we could have done reviewing this game because that was boring.
I mean,
So,
honestly, in all honesty, as we're talking through these names, a lot of these guys are going to be call outs from tonight's game anyway. So it just kind of works in conjunction with it. So just go with it, everybody, because nobody wants to hear about 4 quarters of that nonsense.
True. All right. So let's start with offense and then we'll go to defense and then we'll just kind of like work through this list and we'll kind of go one by one. So quarterback, obviously Herbert QB1. We know that. That's a lock. From QB2, we've talked about since it felt like game 2 to game 3 was a big jump. Trey Lance being QB2. So if we're still on the Lance QB2 train, which he was fine today, but also like the O-line did not do him any favors at all today. The question now is Taylor Heineke, who again put up, another goose egg, pretty, poor performance really. And then we saw DJ. I will not try to pronounce his last name. We saw DJ, start off hot, basically threw the game away in that fourth quarter, and then got a garbage touchdown to the Grim late. So if are we in agreement that it's Herbert, Lance making the roster? Well, I mean obviously Herbert, but Lance making QB2.
Yep. Definitely QB2 at this point. I don't think there's any real question about it. Both he and what's the other guy's name?
Yeah.
No, not DJ Heineke. Sorry, it's late over here. But Heineke, same thing. Tonight they just both did okay. It was definitely a patchy job. They didn't get a ton of run in the first half, but when we're talking about who makes the roster as far as QB2, I think without question it's got to be Trey Lance for sure. I do wonder about whether or not they're going to have a third QB initially, because I got to imagine they want to try to get something for Heineke, whether it be in a trade, should I say, and cutting him. I mean, if they have to go that route, then fine. But I think they want to try to do something to maybe potentially pick up a late round pick because they only have 6 going in the next year. So I would assume at some point they're going to try to recoup that some way, somehow.
Yeah, they made a trade for him, in a past offseason. And it's just like that Keenan Allen thing where they traded away a 5th and then got the picks and then got Keenan Allen back anyway on a cheaper deal. I would not put it past Ortiz to try to finagle a pick out of a team for Taylor Heineke, who, a QB veteran that I'm sure some team might look at, but unfortunately didn't put enough together this preseason to really like make a team have to, burn up the phones now and make a call. So I imagine they'll keep 3 quarterbacks. That just feels like an old school football mentality, which Greg Roman and Harbaugh have. So I'd imagine that we'll probably see all 4 of these quarterbacks on this team again, but DJ being a practice squad stash. It felt like he put enough together today, especially that first throw to Gadsden was an absolute dot.
Yeah.
On the run, there were 2 defenders. He led Gaston towards the boundary, laid it over the fingertips of a DB. I mean, that was maybe one of the better throws from a Chargers quarterback this preseason. Well, I take it back. Herbert laced a couple when he played on his first attempts this preseason. But that throw from DJ was absolutely gorgeous. So I don't know. It felt like he put that the pick six was equally as awful on the other end of the spectrum, but I think it's worth a stash on the practice squad. It's kind of like a camp arm that you can kind of use from here and there if you need to prep for anything. But I'm okay with keeping DJ as a practice squad stash.
I mean, look, I was fully prepared to come on here and say that I thought the Chargers were creating like this QB farm system to make young QBs look like future Hall of Famers in the preseason and basically fleece other QB team, needy teams for like picks. I really felt like that was the way until the second half. Now I'm not so sure. But yeah, no, I totally feel you on that. I still see DJU being, and I'm gonna try it. DJ Uangalale. I'm thinking is how that is pronounced.
Yeah, you're in the ballpark. I think you're
okay,
close
cool.
enough.
Is it close enough?
Yeah.
All right, that's as good as it's gonna get. So yeah, DJU for short. I can absolutely see on the practice squad, but yeah, if they were to keep 3 QBs like at cuts, I would understand because just cutting Heineke seems like it's a waste, and I could see them attempting to maneuver him for something. Ideally, from a roster standpoint, I don't love it just based on some of the other tough decisions they're going to have to make. And some of these guys they let go, I don't think specific names that we'll talk about here in a few, you're going to be hard pressed to get them on your practice squad. So I think it boils down to if they get close to some of these guys, whether or not they can finagle them onto the roster. If it comes down between them, like one person, and keeping Taylor Heineke, I'm interested to see what the decision ends up being.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do see a world where they do try to get a pick for Heineke. All right, so running back, we know they drafted Hampton early. He's obviously RB1. Najee Harris, whether he plays or not, is definitely on this roster. So then after that, it's a little bit murky because you've got a bunch of names. Hassan Haskins, who's your special teams demon, as he was labeled early on. Rocket Sanders has had a really good preseason. Kamani Vidal has been marred with injury so far. Jarrett Patterson, same way. Both of them didn't play today. And then Naheem Miller-Hines at the end of that list. I guess I'll jump in first. But so we know Hampton, Najee Harris are definitely making the team. Feels like Haskins didn't really get a lot of run today, and that's because they want to keep him on the roster. He is a special teamer. You saw him get some like short yardage situations last year. So I think he's definitely a lock. And I think at this point, you probably have Rocket Sanders as your RB4. Vidal has had a really, I know they spent a draft pick on him, but he just has had a really, really hard time this preseason. And I think Naheem Miller-Hines is like a great story. And I'm so impressed with how he's come back and been in football shape. But after his, terrible outing with the 2 muffed punts a couple games ago, he will at times spark some, quick little gainers, but after the fumble today, that all but sealed his fate for me. I think he was on the outside looking in to start with, but I think he gave it like at least a valiant effort considering his circumstance. I don't think he makes the team. Jarrett Patterson's a guy I don't think makes the team. And I think Kamani Vidal, I don't think they keep 5 running backs. So if they put Najee Harris, which Ortiz said today that they expect him to be ready week 1. So you don't think he's going to be on the injured list. Kamani Vidal is going to be an interesting situation because I don't see him making the roster, the initial 53. But I do not see them giving up on him either. So I think he's a cut and hopefully stash later because I just don't think if you cut Rocket Sanders that he has any chance of coming back to you on the practice squad. Somebody's going to swoop him up.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I agree with all of the above. I think what ends up happening, and we spoke to this before, there's no chance that you cut Rocket Sanders and expect to get him back on the practice squad. That's not something that's going to happen at this point. They also showed an affinity for him because, they paid the dude $60K as a UDFA, so they absolutely wanted to give him the best shot possible, and I think he showed himself well throughout the preseason. I do have one criticism. It's been the same one that I've had throughout. He's a bigger back. I just wish he was more decisive as a north-south runner, as opposed to like particularly wanting to bounce it outside. He just doesn't lower his pads and run, in between the tackles the way that I would like to see consistently enough, but that's something they can work on. But overall, yeah, I'm gonna believe the Najee thing when I see it. No pun intended there. Just
Yeah.
no real way around that without saying it that way, honestly. But that's just how I feel about it. The dude's working his way back into form. The game is less than 2 weeks away, so we'll see what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks. But let's just take Ortiz at his word. Same thing. Hampton, Najee, Haskins for sure, because he's a core 4 guy, and he's also run really well during the preseason also. And Rocket, and I think they let Kamani go, and there's probably a good chance that you get him back on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm. All right, so tight end might not be all that hard to go over here because Will Dissly, obviously the starter a year ago, Tyler Conklin, a guy they picked up in free agency. They drafted Gaston, who had a nice showing today. Tucker Fisk, who showed some nice blocking ability last year, lined up at fullback. And then you have Steve O'Klotz and then Thomas Yasmin. Klotz, a couple receptions today, but it feels like there's 4 guys there. Do you think they keep 3? Do you think they keep 4? What do you think?
I could absolutely see them keeping 4. And the reason why, and by the 4th, is Tucker Fisk, because I think, with Slater going down and Pipkins not being your right tackle, there's probably going to be an added emphasis on that right side for additional protection and also in run blocking. And we know what Tucker Fisk offers there. He can help out when you're dealing with some more of those dominant pass rushers on that side. Hopefully Pipkins can take his guys one-on-one, but if you want just that added layer of protection, somebody that can help maybe chip, throw Fisk out there. And if you want to line up in a personnel where you have multiple tight ends, he's going to be a part of that. And they want to run the ball. They want to be a downhill running team anyway. It just makes sense. So I could absolutely see them keeping 4. He's another guy, though, that if they decided to cut, they could probably get back on the practice squad. But I don't know if they want to go that route. I know that they like Tucker Fisk. And with that being said, because of the strategy that they want to utilize on offense and also because of what happened to Slater, I think he's probably got a better chance at making the 53 than what he did prior to the injury.
And I don't know if you saw it today, but I think Josh Harris went down with an injury.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And Fisk is a backup long snapper.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. So that probably plays into it as well. Don't know how serious that injury is, but okay. So now we're on to where we're at wide receivers. So Trey Harris, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, KLS, QJ, Darius Davis. That feels like 6. That's kind of pretty much locked in. Do you see any of the following making this team? Brennan Rice, Jalen Reagor, Jalen Johnson, Jaquay Jackson, Dale Vion Campbell, and Luke Grimm. Anybody?
Beyond the first 6, no, but it's interesting though because we did see a little bit of Jalen Reagor today. There was a Jalen Reagor sighting in today's game, which is funny because he was pretty much out of sight, out of mind for me. I didn't even realize he was back at practice. I guess I missed that. But I know they like him, but just based on what they've seen from the receivers, the younger guys stepping up, the addition of Keenan, I think he's on the outside looking in, potentially another practice squad guy. But here's the thing. I'll just say this so we can get it out of the way. Brendan Rice, it was real, underwhelming, and I wanted it for you, champ, but only one former 49ers Hall of Fame wide receiver's son showed up tonight, and it wasn't Jerry's boy. And this was his last shot at it. Unfortunately, I really thought that something could come from that, but just wasn't meant to be. It hasn't clicked to this point. And speaking of, not to get off topic, but why does it feel like we always get the wrong one? Like we got the wrong Watt brother. In hindsight, did we get the wrong Bosa? Personal political affiliations aside, I'm speaking strictly to the play on the field.
Right, the player.
And, and now, this, I don't know. It seems like one of those weird Chargers things, but I digress.
Rice. While you hoped that he would make the team and he would progress, it just didn't feel like he made enough of a jump. And then with the double dipping on wide receiver in this draft as well, it didn't bode well for him. And the body language today from Brendan Rice was just bad. I mean, anytime a ball was thrown his way, he was just kind of looking around. And granted, I do feel like he should have got a PI call, probably too. But I mean, he didn't look happy with the quarterback. He didn't look, it was bad all the way around. So, so that was, I didn't see him making the roster anyway. He was kind of like on the outside looking in. And then Luke Grimm, who went from, the punt return touchdown, and we thought, hey, maybe there's some like depth there as a practice squad guy, like muffs 2 punts today. I know he got the touchdown late, which DJ did a really good job of looking off that safety, by the way, on that touchdown. Felt like a little too late for him. So maybe a guy you could stash on the practice squad, but just did not help himself out today, even with the TD catch. So no, I think it's those 6. It's Trey Harris, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, KLS, QJ, and Darius Davis as your kind of almost gadget player now. And then also as your returner, KLS has the speed, so it's not like he's going to need to see too much time now as a wide receiver. I know they talked him up as taking a jump this offseason. We just have not seen it in the preseason. So we'll see. But yeah, I think it's those 6, and Rager is out, and that would be great. Dale Campbell
there's
is
an
going to be a practice
opportunity
squad guy, though.
for a grim joke there about his chances of making the team. I'm going to skip over that. Instead, I'm going to say that he went full Naeem Miller-Hines.
Oh my gosh.
And that is what probably sealed his fate for today. Yeah, apparently. It's like Rogue from the X-Men, like how she can touch people and absorb their powers. Yeah. I guess maybe he took his gloves off and gave Hines like a high five for the game or something. I don't know. That was terrible. The ball hit him in the face mask like twice. And on the broadcast, they were talking about maybe it was the wind. I'm like, look, let's not try to shoot him any bail. That was horrible. But after we saw from him, like what we saw from him the last 2 weeks, it was a nice story. Again, this could be another practice squad situation. I don't want to just completely punt on the guy.
No.
I said punt. Terrible, terrible. Him on the practice squad seems fine. But as far as a realistic option for the 53, I don't think that was going to happen before. It definitely ain't happened after tonight.
Yeah, I think Grimm has a chance at the practice squad. I think Dale Campbell most likely makes the practice squad. Some really nice sideline catches today from DJ, and was running with the ones in camp. It feels like a guy that they might want to stick with and maybe develop later on. Brennan Rice, I guess, could be one of those options as well. If you believed in it, I think Rager is just all but gone here. And then somebody asked, does Rager have trade value? That answer is no.
Slim to none, I would imagine. What is this? The Chargers are his 3rd or 4th team, if I'm not mistaken. So drafted by the Eagles,
Vikings,
ended up with the what was it? The Vikings? Yeah, I'm sorry, you're Patriots? Right. I think he was drafted by the Vikings, ended up on the Eagles, then the Pats, now the Chargers. I might be missing a team in there somewhere, but yeah, just not the consistency to really stick around anywhere. But for whatever reason, the Chargers have this thing for like reclamation projects, and he was a former 1st-round wide receiver, and maybe they just feel like they can get the most out of him. The problem is at this point, he's into year like 4 or 5 of his career. Not saying that he can't still be something. I mean, he also offers you special teams value as a returner, but it's just maybe somebody they want to keep around in the event that one of their guys goes down, and since he can give you more than just on the offensive side of the ball, he can give you some return value. It'd be nice to just keep him on the roster somehow, some way, and that'll probably be on the practice squad. As far as Dale Campbell goes, I mean, tonight, he came back down to earth because he had a drop again, but I was ready to give him a pass because he pissed me off last week after he dropped. Well, not dropped, completely missed and whiffed on that go ball that would have essentially sealed the game against the Rams. And I know there's preseason, but you still want to win. Dude went, I don't know, something about him and DJU tonight, at least in the first half. I don't know if somebody had like the Dragon Balls and they wished for like the power of Randy Moss on him or something, but dude was going up and snatching quarters off the top of the backboard like that entire 2-minute drive. So that was fun to watch. And it gives you a look into why the Chargers think that he's a player that can be developed, because he's got like, that 50-50 deep speed ability, as well as the 50-50 ability to go up and get the ball. So you saw a glimpse of it tonight, and maybe it's just something around they want to keep around to develop also. So yeah, probably another practice squad guy potentially.
And so this is Rager's 6th season. 2 seasons with the Eagles, Vikings, Patriots, Chargers last year, and then also
So the Eagles drafted him, and then he went to the Vikings. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure there's that like infamous video because he got drafted in 2020 where Zimmer and the GM were like all like, "Oh my God, they drafted Rager," because the Eagles were right before the Vikings, and the Vikings got Jefferson there.
Jefferson,
yeah,
that was. I think that was the Jefferson draft. You're right.
Yeah, there's something like that. Where I know they were celebrating because they took Rager instead of the guy they wanted. All right, so so that'll lock in. That's a pretty steady 6 wide receivers. Offensive line is going to be a little bit more tricky.
Sheesh.
So Joe Alt, Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, Mekhi Becton, and Trey Pipkins are your projected starting 5. Jamari Salyer is a guy who is locked in. That's 6. Andre James seems pretty close to locked in.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's Branson Taylor who went down with an injury today, but they drafted Carson Barnhart, Corey Stewart, Ryan Nelson, Nash Jones, Josh Kaltenberger, and David Sharp. Do you have any names at all?
I know this is a nasty list, man.
Yeah, I know. So Alt, Johnson, Bozeman, Becton, Pipkins are in. Salyer is in. Mm-hmm. Branson Taylor, he walked off, so he should be fine. He gets a pass because he got drafted. Andre James is going to be your interior, depth piece. And then after that, I hate to say this because he played so bad today, but it feels like just getting a veteran swing tackle like David Sharp and having him as your last, swing guy probably makes more sense than rolling with a Kaltenberger or a Barnhart. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Barnhart has, if I'm not mistaken, he has those ties from to Harbaugh from Michigan, but I don't think that matters anymore.
No.
The dude's it's just not working. And that can only get you so far. Names like Corey Stewart. Let's not waste our time here.
Yeah, I know.
And David Sharp, he's got experience. A guy that was with the Ravens for a while, also familiar with the scheme, how they want to run the ball. In limited action, like last week, he didn't look terrible. Tonight, I'm gonna have to go back and watch, but the false starts, things like that. It wasn't just him tonight, but just mental lapses. Can't have any of that, especially not for a vested veteran like him. Probably yes. When we're talking Sharp, because at this point they want to sell us on Jamari Salyer being the quote unquote swing tackle, which he played left tackle his rookie year and handled things pretty well. I don't think he's ever played really any right tackle, so that's tricky. But he definitely slimmed down. Apparently, he's been playing really well in camp. He feels like more of a guard than a tackle, but I just don't see the footwork to be a swing tackle per se. But that's what they're rolling with. If they would rather not do that, and I would be perfectly fine if they didn't. I mean, unless he can show us something that I haven't seen quite yet on the right side, then yeah, I'm all good with him. Keeping David Sharp, I guess. But yeah, you're not gonna get it done with Corey Stewart. And I mean, I know Carson Barnhart. I think he's played up and down the line from Michigan up until this point, but nah, he ain't it either.
No.
So David Sharp is the only realistic name I can see. If you're going further down the line, names like Nash Jones and Josh Kaltenberger. So Kaltenberger looked like he could be a developmental guy from the center position. So if they end up stashing him on the practice squad, fine. But if we're talking about 53-man guys, the buck kind of stops at David Sharp, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think they keep those 9. Alt, Johnson, Bozeman, Becton, Pipkins. And then for depth, Salyer, Branson Taylor, Andre James, and then David Sharp. But what I think David Sharp serves as is your kind of placeholder as that like 9th offensive lineman. And then when cuts happen and or a possible trade happens, that's your first man out in your O-line. Like go find your swing tackle, somebody that has somebody better than what David Sharp is. Welcome that competition, bring that kid in as your 9th guy and then boot Sharp out. I mean, he was basically taken off the trash heap at this point. He was signed so late into camp. No team had signed him up to that point. And you like a veteran piece to be your like last offensive lineman on the depth chart, which is promising. But I think if you can improve that, which I do believe Ortiz can do, you just basically flip Sharp, keep Sharp as your initial 53, and then either make a trade or find somebody from cuts and upgrade that last spot with Sharp.
Oh yeah. When you're talking about churning the back end of the roster, this is definitely one of those names. Not the only one for sure that may be or may make the initial cut, but it's kind of tree shaking time here in the next week before we get to cut downs. So when Tuesday rolls around, that final 3 has to be completely solidified at that point. Don't be surprised if some of the names that you see initially around end up not making it to the roster 2 weeks from now. If you don't see those guys rostered by the time the Chargers are playing the Chiefs, it won't be a shocker. Some of them just have to fill a void for the time being. But again, some of these names don't make any sense in the event that something were to happen to one of your players, thinking that you can just throw one of these guys in and you're going to be able to basically circumvent their issues isn't super realistic, especially not in the type of offense the Chargers want to run.
All right. So you know what? We didn't do fullbacks. What about Scott Matlock? Do you think, I guess we could get to him with defensive line, but
I don't know how much defensive line Matlock's going to play. They've got a really solid rotation. And I mean, when we get to defensive line, there's a name that's going to come up there that, I'm sure everyone saw tonight that made a lot of noise that I would not be surprised going to be a part of that rotation. But I think Matlock, as much as I get it, he's got the dark gray jersey on at practice and that makes him special and stand out. But, I think fullback is where he's going to have to hang his helmet for the time being. And if he does end up playing any defense, it's probably going to be out of necessity because like 1 or 2 guys go down for whatever reason.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think they're going to end up keeping Matlock anyway. I know there's some talk about him being on the bubble. I think he ends up making it. All right. So especially with as much running as they want to do. So defensive line, we'll get right to it. Tier Tart, Tito Obonia, Deshaun Hand, Jamari Caldwell, Justin Aboigbe, Naquan Jones, who all, it feels like those 6 are all pretty much solidified. Yeah. And then you get to Christopher Hinton, T-Rod Edwards, Nesta J. Silvera, T-Rod Edwards flashed once or twice. Hinton has been kind of like lingering, hasn't really made a ton of plays, but Nesta J. Silvera was the first time I even saw his name. And he had a batted ball at the line of scrimmage and forced a punt. He made a really good tackle in the run game on a 3rd and short. He popped twice today. I want to give him a shout out. He does not make the team, but it feels like your 6 making this team. And then you can throw Matlock as fullback / D line in this group too. But Tart, Obonia, Hand, Caldwell has flashed a ton. Aboigbe made a play today, but Naquan Jones was very, very good today. So I think those are your 6. It felt like, Naquan early, like was clogging lanes. He made his presence felt early on. He got a run stop, had a tackle for a loss when the Chargers had the 49ers backed up near their own goal line. So, it feels like those are going to be your 6 and they're just going to be a rotational. It doesn't feel like they all feel like kind of in the same playing field. It's not like a giant drop off. Aboigbe feels like he's still kind of a work in progress at this point, but everybody else feels like there's not a huge drop off if one of these guys, comes in or out at this point. They all rotate, all do the same thing, and they all seem to be doing it pretty well so far, at least in the preseason.
So I was super concerned. I think we all were once Puna walked about how they were going to fill that void.
Yeah.
And it initially seemed like it was going to be done by playing the numbers game. You get a bunch of guys. Hopefully somebody pops in. It's multiple guys that have popped during the preseason and collectively, like they look like they might actually be solid. Naquan Jones was all over the place tonight, like all game long, super disruptive. I'm not just talking about, stopping guys at the line of scrimmage. I mean, getting 1 to 2 yards into the backfield for TFLs, forcing running backs to redirect into, assisted tackles elsewhere. And it's a name that you heard popping up through camp, but I don't think it was as prevalent as some of the other ones. but Jones has been pretty solid practically all preseason. But you see guys like Jamari Caldwell, who are, I'm going to say more widely known name, also because he was a draft pick, and that's the guy that was pegged to kind of be the Puna replacement, and he's shown up very well, very similar game to what Puna offers also. So yeah, those guys that you mentioned at the top are pretty much where the cutoff is. If you want to mix Matlock in there as a potential maybe rotational guy, but like I said before, I don't think he gets a lot of burn on the D line unless they suffer an injury or two, and then they have to mix him in there because that's what he was drafted to play. As whether or not he's going to be super effective there, I don't know. It's just kind of more to fill a gap in the event they need it.
Yeah, those 6 seem pretty much locked in. And I think this might be Hinton's last ride. He's kind of stuck on been kind of a practice squad, like lingering player, but I just don't think, it obviously wouldn't hurt if they kept him, but it just feels like, Edwards flashed a little bit.
Yeah.
We saw Jade Silvera flash a little bit. There's some other DBs that flashed. There's going to be some like hard cuts that you're going to have to make. And it feels like, those are guys you're going to have to keep on the practice squad. Christopher Hinton has done really not much since he's been here. Flashed in a preseason last year, not much really since then. I don't know. I'm kind of out on Hinton in the practice squad.
He's another Michigan Harbaugh guy also. So he has those ties as well. Might have something to do with him still being around because I don't see it either.
Yeah. All right. So then edge rushers here. This is where we start to make some tough decisions. It feels like on defense, there's a lot of them. Offense, it just kind of they're all kind of like falling together. Edge rushers: Khalil Mack, Thule, Bud Dupree, Kyle Kennard, probably all locked in there. Then you've got Tremont Morris Brash, who a year ago impressed. This year has fallen off a little bit. Kylan Guidry, Garmin Randolph made a play today, got a sack. But the man who is really making a case for a roster spot is a man not only doing it on the field, but also on special teams, and that's Caleb Murphy.
Yeah. So I think Murphy makes the 53 for a few reasons. Number one, because he's produced, but also Kyle Kennard is essentially like Casper the Friendly Ghost. It's actually very disgusting. Even tonight, dude was out there either doing cardio or he was wrestling the entire night, one of the two, but he wasn't playing football. It just looked really bad. I know that he was dealing with some sort of injury, so maybe he's just trying to work his way back from that. But it looked so bad tonight that I almost feel like when you're talking about who you're going to put out there on the field in a rotation, I would put Caleb Murphy on the field before I put Kyle Kennard out there.
Yeah.
But he's a draft pick, so they're not going to not keep him. I just think that Caleb Murphy is someone that you can't let go because of everywhere he produces. It's on special teams. He did it as an edge player over the last few weeks as well. So he gets contributions across the board. And to this point, he's outperforming your draft pick. So I think he kind of forced his way onto the roster. So that's the name that sticks out to me. Garmin Randolph is a really intriguing body type. The dude's like 6'8", 260 pounds. I just remember seeing him coming out of it's wild. I remember him coming out of Baylor and thinking, okay, if someone can get their hands on him and develop him, because he's actually got like above average athleticism. Also, he just had a really weird experience at Baylor. His career is just kind of strange if you go back to look into it. But that's a guy I could see on the practice squad because with his skill set and his size and his length, that's something that you would probably want to develop. But yeah, overall, I would say easily Caleb Murphy makes the 53. To me, it's not as tough a decision as maybe some think. You just have to compare it to, if Kyle Kennard played this preseason and played well, you might have an argument as to why you feel like, okay, Caleb, you balled out, but just it's a numbers game. We can't really make that work. But to me right now, you've got to keep him as your 5th edge rusher because you don't know what you have in Kyle Kennard at this point.
Yeah, I'm keeping those 5. Mack, Thule, Dupree, Murphy, and Kennard. And I think Randolph is an interesting practice squad stash at this point. But I would keep 5 edge rushers for 2 reasons. One, Kennard just feels like he's going to need a lot of time to develop. So I'm not sure you can put him on the field right away. I am also more comfortable having Murphy on the field than I am Kennard. But the other issue I have is Mack is getting much older. He's on a 1-year deal. Thule has been successful when he's been the third option. When you've got Bosa and Mack together, he is so much better. When you scheme him to get to the quarterback, he's so much better. This is his first time being like a full-time starter opposite a Mack or a Bosa. Like there's been injuries and all that, but he's opening the season as a starting edge rusher, not a rotational guy. And then Bud Dupree is getting up there in age as well and feels like a rotational guy, not a starter anymore. And you not only do you not know what you have in Kennard at this point, which feels like, he's going to be one of those guys that needs to develop, and that's totally fine, especially where you draft him. But if you don't keep a guy like Caleb Murphy, who showed production in the preseason, then you're taking a huge gamble on two older guys like Mack and Dupree, and then kind of an unknown in Thule, and then a really, really, really raw edge rusher in Kennard. So I think Caleb Murphy not only proved that he should make the 53 with his play during this preseason, but I think from a roster standpoint, you have got to get that insurance as an edge rusher. And, this defense has got to get after the quarterback. And if, these guys aren't working out, they're going to have to start throwing DBs and all that. But first, they got to start getting to the quarterback off the edge. And that's how the only way you can do that is by, at this point, adding another one in Caleb Murphy and hoping that, at some point, mixing and matching some of this, rotational work at some point.
Well, the other thing Murphy offers, and we spoke to this before as far as special teams value, but previously, Thule was a heavy contributor on special teams, but now he's going to be a full-time edge starter, so you got to relieve him of some of those snaps. Caleb Murphy also offers you that. Kyle Kennard, to this point, does not. So again, just for all of the value you get from a guy like Murphy, I can't see how they would be able to, come up with a reason to not have him on the initial 53. So to me, he's a lock at this point.
Yeah. All right. Linebackers, another tough decision here. So Deion Henley, obviously starter. Denzel Perryman, obviously starter. Troy Dye, a rotational guy and a core special teamer. Junior Colson, who's currently injured. It's going to be tough. I have a feeling he's going to start on the IR, to be honest with you. Missed a couple days, isn't even like running on the side yet. So it just feels like really bad timing. But anyway, and then you've got Delshawn Phillips. You got Mwaga, who made a play today, Emily Johnson, and then the man who feels like shown up more than anybody else so far in the preseason at the bottom of this roster, and it's Marlo Wax. So I think
you mean Hemi Neutron.
Yeah. So I think this is interesting. I think Colson's going to make the team, but whether he starts on the IR or not is a question. So, Colson, you can put to the side. That's a different conversation. I don't have any insight on if he's going to start on the IR or not, so I'm not going to speak on that. But we know Henley, Perryman, Troy Dyer locked in. Delshawn Phillips just came off the IR. He's now or the PUP, excuse me, the physically unable to perform list. And he passed his physical, and the Chargers made a pretty big deal out of it. The coaches talked about it. There was a talk about Delshawn Phillips replacing that whole like Nick Neiman type role that he had on special teams. And he's been a core special teamer throughout his career. Now, can you keep five? Let's throw Junior Colson on the IR, okay? Can you keep Henley, Perryman, Dye, Phillips, and Wax? Do you get rid of Phillips and keep Wax? Do you get rid of Wax and keep Phillips? Where are you rolling with this?
So, Greg? Man, the reason why I guess to us as fans and people who watch the game, watch all that goes on, you look at a guy like Marlo Wax and you're thinking to yourself, he's absolutely played his way onto the roster, and you could utilize him on special teams as well. Delshawn Phillips has been hurt all of camp. So in our minds, it's just like, well, seems pretty simple, except for the fact that Ryan Ficken basically stood in front of a podium and said that Delshawn Phillips is essentially on this roster already. He's a guy that's going to be here. So there are no questions about that. That being said, it feels like it makes Marlo Wax the odd man out, but I just don't get how I don't get how you let him slip away. And I didn't realize Junior Colson was hurt to the point to where like he's not doing anything,
Yeah.
because I guess maybe I heard that, I knew that he was out. I just didn't know how serious it was. But also I was super confused about it because he played he played through the last game. He finished it. Maybe it was something underlying. Who knows? We don't know the details about that to this point. But man, if it were to come down between Del'Shawn Phillips and Marlo Wax, to me, like, I get what you wanted to do with Del'Shawn Phillips, and he's going to be a special teams ace, and you're counting on that. But that would be a really tough decision to make for me to let go of Marlo Wax based on what we've seen. Again, he's shown up as a guy who can get it done on special teams, but we're just talking about on-field snaps and the potential to where, like, I mean, injuries happen all the time. It's 100% injury rate in this game. The Chargers don't have the strongest linebacker core as far as depth is concerned. But when you see a kid like this flashing the way that Wax has all of preseason, and even you hear things like Derwin speaks really highly of him, a couple of the guys have shouted him out as just being a player, a dog on the field. To me, I'd let Del'Shawn Phillips go. I'm sorry. I would roll with Marlo Wax. I roll with the kid and just let it ride from there, because I've seen enough from him and the level of consistency to where I feel comfortable with it. But it feels like if they let him go, that would be the biggest disappointment as far as the defense goes. And we're talking about someone who's basically been under the radar. What was he on the practice squad last year? I don't remember. No. He's a UDFA. Sorry, I was getting him confused with someone else. So Wax is a UDFA because I think he was at Syracuse, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I roll with the kid. I haven't watched enough Del'Shawn Phillips from his time in Houston to really know very much. But I mean, if Ficken's going to bat for him to this degree, I'm going to trust the special teams coach. He knows better than I do. It would just suck to see Wax walk, because I don't think you're getting him on your practice squad.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's played for like 4 or 5 different teams.
Del'Shawn Phillips?
Yeah. Yeah, because I know he's with the Ravens, and then he was with Houston last year. I'll look it up. But yeah, I think what's hard about this decision is you signed Del'Shawn Phillips to be the last linebacker on your roster. So you almost had it kind of like locked in before preseason even started. And then Marlo Wax performed the way he did and started to like make a name for himself, and then started to like acclimate himself with the team. And, and you got Derwin talking about him, coaches talking him up and all that. So how do you not keep a kid who worked from nothing, a UDFA, played his ass off in the preseason, better than almost anybody on this team, keep a guy like, say, Caleb Murphy, who also did good, but I mean, feels like Wax has put up so much more on tape than anybody else. How do you keep Murphy over a Wax? How do you explain to your team that you can put all this on tape, you can play your ass off, but then you can ultimately get cut just because it didn't work out? I mean, it's supposed to be the competitor's welcome, and he competed, and to be honest with you, earned a spot more than Del'Shawn Phillips did. And I know Del'Shawn was injured, and maybe that's not fair, but I mean, it's hard to argue that Wax does not deserve to be a 53. I think he earned it.
You know what's really kind of concerning? The fact that Marlo Wax has been such a good fit defensively in a scheme that he just learned, and Junior Colson, who lived in this scheme in Michigan for 3 years, still seems to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off. So you got this UDFA who's right now a better fit defensively than your second-round draft pick from a couple of years ago. And I mean, that doesn't mean that they're going to give him a chance over Colson. Again, he was a round 2 pick, so they're going to roll with him until the wheels fall off, until he proves he just can't do it. But the fact that you haven't been able to stay on the field. So right now you haven't, lent yourself to justifying that pick to this point. And I was a huge Junior Colson guy. I'm still like not out on him, but I am concerned just because he's just not available. So you can't improve if you're not physically on the field. So to know that they would keep a Colson around because he's not going anywhere. So I'm not saying they should do anything with him, but to watch Marlo Wax, who, like you mentioned, worked his butt off as a contributor on special teams, as well as at the second level as a linebacker, it feels counterproductive.
Derry says Colson is headed to the IR, which makes room for Wax. Is that that can't be official because they don't make moves? Is that I'm guessing he's predicting that Colson goes to the IR. Is my guess because they couldn't make that move yet. But anyway, okay. So now cornerback, and here this is more hard choices here. Craig, we got Dante Jackson, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, Jasir Taylor, Dean Leonard, Benjamin St. Just, Nico Reed, Triquez Bridges, Miles Purchase, Eric Rogers, Nehemiah Shelton, Harrison Hand. So I mean, I don't think we need to talk about all of them. I think Leonard is hurt. So that's also a Colson situation, it feels like at this point. Whether they want to keep him on the IR, maybe, I'm not sure. But I don't think Dean Leonard comes out of this on the 53. I don't think he's healthy enough for week 1. So we know Dante Jackson, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart are locks, right? We can call those 3. Okay. So now the conversation becomes, are they going to keep 5 or 6? And of those, Benjamin St. Just, Jasir Taylor, Nico Reed. I think Triquez Bridges is out, right? He's a practice squad guy at this point?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Miles Purchase, probably he made some plays, might be a practice squad guy, and Eric Rogers, I think, is probably injured, right? He wasn't back today, was he?
No.
Okay. So he's probably still on crutches, so he'll be a injured guy or a practice squad guy. They'll do something with him. So now the question is, of these 3, which 2 are in and who is out? St. Just, Jasir Taylor, Nico Reed.
Listen, man. This is why I'm pissed at these injuries, because it took guys off of the field and stopped them, it stopped their momentum. Eric Rogers had one phenomenal game. It would have been nice to see him finish off the preseason just to get a better idea of, his level of consistency. Nico Reed missed some time, but came back, actually showed out today. I mean, aside from the TD that was essentially the walk-off TD last week, and I mean, he just got bodied. The dude is significantly bigger than him. He just got out muscle for that ball. He's gonna have to deal with that. He's not a huge corner, 5'9", 180 something. So but he's been consistent. The odd man out here, and I'm pissed about it because of the injuries, because it may force them to keep him on the roster, is, of course, Jasir Taylor, because the dude is a net negative. I don't want to hear anything about what he brings you on special teams, because I also saw Nico Reed perform on special teams. Nico Reed can also play in the slot. So when you're talking a one-on-one comparison, this UDFA is outperforming this. How many years of Jasir Taylor been in the league? 3, 4? And you've seen the best of what you're going to see of Jasir Taylor. Last year he was playing with a broken bone in his leg, so that was what the excuse was. Not an excuse. It was the reason, because of course you soldiering through that, and you're not going to be the best version of yourself. Well, now he's 100% healthy, and he looks just as bad now as he did last year with a broken bone in his leg. How many passes are we going to give him? I think enough grace has been given. He was talked up in camp. It's not translating into the games. You got a younger guy who's battling through injury and still performing, because keep in mind, that game that Nico Reed caught that pick 6, well, almost pick 6, was because, that game he was actually dealing with an injury. So he was still able to perform hurt. Jasir Taylor can't perform hurt. He's proven that. And also Nico Reed has proven that he can provide you, special team snaps as well. So to me, as much as I want Jasir Taylor off the roster, I think because of the injuries and the uncertainties, and then you got to have guys that can give you some special teams value, I think he might make the roster. I'm just praying that he does not.
So are you saying they keep 6 corners?
Well, we haven't gotten the safeties yet, which I feel like we should have done safeties first. It might have helped me, but
you want to do safeties right now? We can move
no.
back?
You know what?
Okay.
Hell with it. 5.
Okay.
Now let Jasir Taylor. I'm going to speak this into existence.
Okay.
If it's wrong, it's wrong. But let's just say 5 for now. What do you say?
Okay. And so you're saying Dante Jackson, Tar Heap Still, Cam Hart, Benjamin St-Juste, and Nico Reed?
Yeah. St-Juste is terrifying also.
I know.
But that's a whole different conversation to have. If this is what we're working with, like, what's the best of the worst that we have?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. St-Juste was a free agent signing that they were excited about. I was not, and watching him in the preseason, I am still not. This feels like another position I hope that they can remedy with maybe a trade or some kind of 53 cut. But I feel like Nico Reed has become a better option through preseason and working with the same exact, roster constraints. Like, it's not like, well, Jasir Taylor went against ones last year and he got, his ass kicked, but Nico Reed's going against UDFAs right now in preseason, but that's not the case. They're both playing deep in the preseason. Nico Reed playing so much better than Jasir Taylor, and Nico Reed not only making plays on defense, where he almost had 2 picks today, made a really good tackle in the run game, a really big hit on a pass today too, but also like made a really, really good tackle on special teams. So I understand Jasir Taylor was a fun gunner for the last regime, and they talked about him being a gunner this regime. I feel like Nico Reed can absolutely fill Jasir Taylor's shoes there and be a much better player on the field on defense as well. So I say Jasir Taylor out, St-Juste is the 4th, Nico Reed's the 5th. St-Juste scares me though. Everybody, terrifying. Dante Jackson's still kind of an unknown in my mind. Tar Heap Still, Cam Hart, hopefully, have another 2 good seasons. But Cam Hart dealing with concussions, Dante Jackson's been injured throughout his career. Tar Heap Still a smaller corner. I'm concerned about this group in general, but we'll just see how it goes.
So they have a type of boundary corner that they want. They want a bigger body guy, which is kind of why St-Juste fits the bill for it. But when we're talking the on-field playing consistency, it just doesn't stack up. Like, at some point, production has to matter. Like, even like you mentioned, Dante Jackson has question marks, but he's got ball production. I think we had like 5-6 picks last year. So, he's a gambler, but when he gets it, he gets it. And sometimes we're talking about like field flipping picks, opportunities for pick sixes because he's extremely athletic. He's got pretty decent hands. Benjamin St-Juste is just a big body. Somebody put in the chat that I think somebody mentioned that he was Michael Davis 2.0.
Yeah, that's here.
What's scary? Michael Davis might be a better open field tackler than Benjamin St-Juste is, and that's not saying a lot at all. But from even an athletic standpoint, St-Juste might be a little bit more agile than Davis is, but at least Davis tackled on occasion and he had some long speed. St-Juste is a big body that doesn't press very well. He has a very difficult time judging the ball in the air, ball tracking. And one thing you have to do when you track the ball is you can't slow down. He slows his feet looking for the ball, and wide receivers are able to create separation in front of him. So he gets stacked really easily, and he's essentially a liability in one-on-one man-to-man coverage. You almost always have to keep a safety over the top of him. Again, if Steve Clinkscale can fix him, then like I said last week, that man can probably also walk on water, because that would be a full-on miracle.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all that. I don't know how that's possible, but we'll see. All right, so we're saying 5 corners. I think we agree there. Moving on to safety, we know Derwin James, Elijah Molden, Alohi Gilman are all pretty much locks. Then it becomes Tony Jefferson, R.J. Mickens, Kendall Williamson, Jalen Jones. Do you think they keep 4 or 5?
This is the one where I'm thinking they have to keep 5 just because of the way that they play. They're going to roll out 3 safety looks almost as like a base defense with Derwin as a big nickel. That being said, you're gonna have to have on the back end Molden and Gilman. The problem is Gilman he seemed to get hit with the injury bug every season also. So you're gonna have to have someone there as a reinforcement. Tony Jefferson has shown that he can come in and be reliable. You definitely got to steal in RJ Mickens. I saw that he got hurt. He got dinged up in the game, but I think he went back in, so I'm pretty sure he's okay. But collectively, this is probably the best depth on the team. I mean, aside from if you want to consider the defensive line, if you can call it 1A, 1B. To me, the safety group is probably as deep as the defensive line is, like the interior defensive line. So for me, 5 is what makes the most sense because the safeties are kind of the engine of the secondary. And because of everything they're going to ask Derwin to do from the slot position, and that's where he's going to be, I'm assuming, carrying like the early downs, like first, second down, he'll probably be getting like those slot big nickel plays. And then, when they need like a dime package or something like that, or if they want to flip him back into the back end, and then, you got your corners on the outside, like Dante Jackson and if Cam Hart is available, and then put Tarheeb still in the slot, you can roll that way. But essentially for like the big nickel packages, you want to have that 3 safety rotation, but you're also going to have, like I mentioned before, reinforcements for a guy like Alohi Gilman, because he probably is going to get banged up at some point. The question is, when is it going to happen? And actually it already did.
Yeah. I think it's 5. They're going to need to rotate their guys. Derwin, Molden, Gilman. Tony Jefferson has shown to be some still have some gas in the tank, be a nice little extra DB when they need him. And then RJ Mickens has shown that he deserves a roster spot. Has shown out. They drafted him. I will say though, I think Kendall Williamson deserves a practice squad stash. He's flashed a lot this preseason. Wasn't quite in the conversation as a 6 safety, but I think did enough to say, hey, we need to keep him around and maybe develop. There is something there. He did enough today to keep him around in the practice squad. All right. And then we don't need to talk about special teams. Hopefully Josh Harris is okay. And we don't have to, worry about long snapper talk and all that other stuff. So, all right. I think that's it. That's everybody. So I think that was much more fun than what could have been with that game. So preseason is over. We will know by Tuesday who's on the roster. I'm sure we will review it, and hopefully there'll be some moves made to kind of churn out the bottom of this depth chart and improve it, because I think there are some spots they can do that, aka offensive line. And we will get into that when they make those moves, and we'll talk about it on Tuesday. So we will see you then. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Like, share, and sub, everybody, in case you haven't. Big salute.
Yep.